So what do we do about the insatiable, well, as George W. Bush called it, addiction to oil here in the United States? Elizabeth Ames Jones, who is the woman in charge of all oil in the state of Texas. Oddly, they call that the Texas Railroad Commissioner back in the days when the railroads were the major industry and the major consumers of oil. She's also a candidate for the U.S. Senate. JonesForTexas.com is her website. Elizabeth Ames Jones, welcome back to the program.
Thom, how are you?
I am well. I hope you are too.
Well, I am, and I'm glad to hear your voice, although it'd be better to be face-to-face. But I look forward to the conversation.
Good, thank you. Offshore drilling, from the statistics that I'm seeing from the Minerals and Management Service, which I realize, somebody might have come up with after they snorted a few lines of coke. But nonetheless, the MMS is saying that if we continue off all the offshore leases and all the offshore drilling, if all of it was to be as successful as is anticipated over the next how many years is it till 2030? Over the next 20 years, it would increase domestic oil production by 3%. On the other hand, if we, as Senator Bernie Sanders points out, that if we were simply to adopt the car mileage standards of 42 miles a gallon that are currently law in Japan, Canada, and South Korea, and are working just fine, thank you very much, instead of saving 3 cents a gallon on gas, 3% of production, we could save $1.42 a gallon. We could massively impact the amount of gas we're using. Why are you advocating that we drill for more oil rather than that we mandate auto efficiency?
Well, these cars have progressively gotten much more efficient over the last 40 years. In fact, they are more efficient. And I have been specifically targeting these 33 offshore wells because I still believe that in spite of the fact whether we use
that you think we should drill.
Oh, yes, I do. And here's the thing. You've got these wells that are drilling in the Gulf, which is a very, very, really, it's been very safe over the years. 50,000 wells have been drilled with very little accidents. I think the last one was decades ago actually in Santa Barbara Bay. But the thing is, Thom, we still need petroleum products for more than just vehicular fuel. We plastics, everything that affects our daily lives, we need petroleum products. And, I have to say I am a big believer in using as much natural gas for fuel for fleet vehicles and vehicles going cross country and long term where it's, practical, so that we can really husband our oil resources and use them more for products and fuels that really are very hard to replace with other ones. And that, to me, is how we become less dependent on foreign sources of oil.
That's a variation on T. Boone Pickens' plan. He's been here on this program, and sure. I don't disagree with him that the reason why we're willing to go for war over oil is the same reason why back in the Roman times people would go to war for salt. It's a strategic resource. Salt was necessary to preserve food so that armies could move. Oil is necessary to move armies. But the fact of the matter is that it's a strategic resource because we use it for transportation. Half of all auto trips in the United States go fewer than 40 miles a day. 40 miles is easily within the range of an electric or a hybrid electric vehicle or a plug-in electric vehicle. We could cut in half. And you well realize the plastics and pharmaceuticals and everything, all of that is byproducts after the gasoline has been refined out. These are secondary. We could cut in half the oil that we're using in this country, and we could strip it of its strategic value if we simply did this. Senator Sanders, we are subsidizing through tax breaks like the oil depletion allowance and others. We're subsidizing the oil industry to the tune of $35 billion a year in the United States right now. Why not pull that subsidy and put $35 billion into electric cars?
I am questioning your figures of a subsidy. I think that there are some accounting tools that, certain people, try and promote as some kind of subsidy, but I'm not sure about it being a subsidy. For instance, intangible drilling and development costs, IDC, for independents, that's not a subsidy, although that's in the list of what progressives are proclaiming as a subsidy. That's an accounting tool. And so all the natural resource minerals are eligible also for percentage depletion income tax deduction. All minerals, I mean, those are accounting tools that are used in many different industries, and they're being confused.
But a depletion allowance is basically saying we're going to give you a tax break for the loss of the asset that is being depleted because you're sucking it out of the ground and selling it. I mean, why not give me a tax break for the depletion of my abilities as I get older? Because eventually I'll die.
Well, why don't we have just a flat tax and everybody is subject to the exact same no matter?
Well, let's not get into income taxes here. I don't think it's going to get us anywhere. But my point is that it seems that with a relatively small amount of money and a relatively small investment in the things that would move us away from oil being a strategic resource and necessary for transportation in a big way, we could save a whole awful lot more money than we could and frankly reduce our dependence on foreign and domestic oil rather than drilling for oil in the Gulf of Mexico.
Well, we may really even want to drill in the Gulf of Mexico and not import. That's the thing. It's our Gulf, it's our energy, it's our American jobs. And so we might prefer to, in fact, displace our imports with drilling right here at home. So I'm not sure that cutting back on our dependency will necessarily relieve us from drilling in our Gulf. In fact, I would prefer to displace these imports from countries, and many of whom, as you know and I know, are not our friends and don't have our best interests at heart, to give us a strategic advantage to fill our petroleum needs, our oil needs through drilling here.
How about a middle ground then? How about a middle ground?
Yeah, I think we agree.
Well, let me just lay this out. Norway and Brazil require blowout preventers that cost $250,000 more than the ones that are currently in use. Dick Cheney rejected this as part of his energy plan because he said it would be too much of a burden on the oil companies. But Norway and Brazil, who are doing just fine, thank you very much, require these blowout preventers that can be remotely activated. We don't have them on our rigs in the Gulf, and we've got all kinds of rigs all over the Gulf. Canada requires that anytime a oil be drilled in Canada, now much of their oil is coming from oil shale, so it's actually mined. Right. But anytime oil is drilled, you have to simultaneously drill a blowout or a relief well, the equivalent of, a relief well at the same time. And that relief well eventually will become a producing well, so it becomes an asset to the company, but it's also a safety factor over the short term. Why don't we simply adopt those best practices immediately?
I think that as MMS looks at this, they very well should. And I believe that you are going to get a lot of, not you, but one is going to have a lot of support for these ordinary standards of practice. But you can put all the blowout preventers, which are very important, and you can have them sonar triggered as they do in Norway. But if you don't have an engineer, you don't have an operator who is standing on the platform, reading the pressure reports, adhering to best practices, engineering standards on how to drill
which BP was not doing.
Onshore, off, it won't matter.
Right.
And I am livid, absolutely livid over what I am hearing, what went on that drilling rig.
Yeah.
Now,
clearly they, and we're just about out of time here, Elizabeth Ames Johnson.
Well, but you know what, Tom? I would have loved to have seen some infrastructure for natural gas fuel vehicles across the country. That would have been where some stimulus dollars would have been put to good use. But it's a great conversation, and I hope you'll invite me back so we can continue.
Okay, thank you very much. Elizabeth Ames Jones, the Texas Railroad Commissioner. JonesForTexas.com is her website. Good speaking with you.